Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It is only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option. I'm posting all of my regular recruiting content on the Patreon site. The link will also be in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is episode 103, another D-line decommitment. So as always, guys, we will jump to the recruiting news, and we'll start with updates from the 2025 class. So we'll start with the title of this podcast, which is Defensive Lineman, Projected Nose Guard in the OU Scheme. Kamori Moore from Lee Summits North, in a bit of a surprise, decommitted from OU last week before the Auburn game. He looks like he, based upon a report that became public from 247, it looks like he took a visit to Iowa State a couple of weeks ago, and OU and Kamori, I think they just decided Kamori was interested, I think, in some different schools. And I think OU felt like, as opposed to Cortez Mills, who's a top 100 player in the nation and might be the best wide receiver verbal OU has, unlike that situation, I think OU felt that Moore, again, is he's only a nose guard in the OU system, based upon what I've seen of his footage and film. He, depending upon what service you're looking at, Kamori is one of the top 5 lower ranked recruits from a composite standpoint. That's obviously not the final decision. OU obviously makes their own evaluations and judges players on their own. And I do think Kamori did have the potential in a couple of years to be a contributor. I think Isaiah Coe is sort of his ceiling. So I think OU decided to go in another direction. And I think Kamori was, I just wonder if the young defensive tackles he's seeing playing for OU in particular, Jaden Jackson and David Stone, and knowing that Trent Wilson is coming in the class as well. And Trent's obviously the most talented D-line commit OU had. I just wonder if Kamori's wondering that there's a better fit, easier access to get on the field, maybe. Also, OU's connections with Lee Summit North have kind of collapsed. Caden Green obviously canceled. Williams Winery's at Missouri with Caden. Jamar Mosey left to go to Central Florida, I believe it was. But I think he's now, I think Jamar is at Nebraska now. And Isaiah Mosey has committed to Nebraska. Was never part of the OU class. Was never a verbal commitment to the Sooners. So I would just wonder if all of those forces plus OU perhaps re-engaging with some other defensive line names decided to go in a different direction. So this leaves OU with one pure defensive tackle only. That, as I said, is Trent Wilson from Maryland. He's having a great year. He's obviously a 3 technique, probably just below the level of David Stone. Maybe if you think about what Grayson Holton is now, that's sort of what Trent Wilson could be as a freshman on campus, that size, that explosion, that sort of interior pass rushing, disruptive skills. Trent has all of that. So I believe Trent's going to try and enroll early. That's the word. So if Trent does enroll early, I think he has a great chance of getting into the defensive line rotation as a pass rusher, doing some pass rush sets perhaps. He's 6'3", 285, probably could be 290, 295. as a defensive tackle. So OU's got a good defensive tackle there, but as I've been kind of lecturing left and right, and let's be consistent here, OU needs numbers. OU cannot stand pat with one defensive lineman in this class. They do have a good situation with 2026 with a number of defensive tackles that have made multiple trips to Norman that have been to Norman several times, seem very, very interested in the Sooners. So, sorry about that. My cat's getting in my cord again. So we'll see. They've got, Taj Overton, Tank Arrington, Deuce Geralds, T.I., the big nose guard from Colorado I talked about last week, Joseph Terry from the camp situation that OU had, the summer camp situation from California, Danny Beal, or obviously does interested in Danny Beal from Arkansas. So there's a number of defensive linemen for 2026 that are very interested in OU, that OU could certainly build a 4-player class in 26. But I still think they want to add some players for 25. So there have been no new offers despite losing 2 verbal commitments. That tells me that OU is probably trying to work some kids that previously were interested in OU. Mekhi Williams-Lee, the defensive tackle from Atlanta, has decommitted from NC State. He just took a visit to Clemson, so that might be where he's leaning. But OU, obviously, he took an official visit, has no OU offer. Christian Evans had an OU offer, but verbal to Virginia Tech and didn't take his OU visit, so OU could still bring him in. He hasn't taken an official visit to OU yet. It does not look like right now that Floyd Boucard is going to work his way back to OU. I'd imagine he's going to take some official visits, maybe commit to there's some chatter that there's some predictions that he might commit to USC. And I think he might still take some additional visits as teams are trying to, teams are always trying to add D-line. So I don't think Boucard is. So I think OU needs at least one more verbal, one more commitment on the D-line. And there's some interesting players out there that OU could offer. I've mentioned from Georgia, a Georgia high school first-year football player from Cameroon. He's committed to Florida, so that probably is a fairly soft commit. That's Joseph Membachu. I believe I have that name wrong. I'm not sure if the M's silent or it'd be just Mbachu. OU also is evaluating kicking the tires on a JUCO prospect with 3 years to play. His name's Tavion Atkinson. He's at Trinity Valley Community College. He's 6'4", 6'5", 280, 285. Probably could easily play at 300 pounds. He is super athletic. He would be a 3, or even possibly at 300 pounds he could play in. He could be a nose guard. He's very athletic. He's getting some big time offers now. So those are some players OU could offer. Obviously, there's some other defensive linemen that they're kind of tracking, which they could be tracking. Or Clemson just lost a commitment from a defensive tackle from North Carolina, Isaiah Campbell, I believe it is. He's interested in North Carolina, which seems weird because I think Mac Brown's kind of on his last legs. But Tennessee obviously is recruiting very well. But OU was connected with him at one point. So he hasn't visited Norman. So OU could get back in with him. I just think there's a multiple number of names that OU could make an offer for. I'd love OU to put 3 D-line in this class. But after losing 2, it's hard to see where 2 names are coming unless they flip some folks that they had originally offered. There's not enough new names, I think. Some people have mentioned from Denton, Xavier Ukapunu, I believe is how you say his name, Ukaponu. I'm not sure he really fits what OU wants to do. To me, he's very similar to Kamori Moore. I think he's a nose guard only, and he's bulked up from being, I think he was more of a 3 technique last year. He's from what I can tell, he's bulked up, he's bigger, but it looks like he may have cost him some movement. So he's I think committed to Wisconsin currently. I don't see that as a fit in terms of where OU would go. I think it's either a big defensive tackle like Floyd Boucard, or it's someone with sort of elite athleticism that could play the 3 or could play the 3 technique, or bulk up to be kind of, or has the size and frame to be a 300-pound defensive tackle. So that's where I think things are heading. I got to admit, I was a little surprised Moore decommitted. He had just visited for the Houston game based upon social media activity. Had been part of the class for nearly at least over a year, nearly 14 months. He committed at the Sooners under the Stars event last year in July, end of July. So, other than Kevin Sperry, he was probably the longest commit as part of this recruiting class. So, again, OU needs to make a move here. I'm not sure. No new offers right now to report. I'm kind of hoping that after the Texas game, or maybe this bye week, we hear some action from OU visiting some kids, or they arrange for some visits to occur for the South Carolina game or the Maine game, because obviously the Alabama game, that's kind of late in the year. That's really close to signing day. It's a little late because signing days moved up. The December signing days moved up because of trying to keep the signing day, let signing day let signing day occur and then have the portal occur afterwards. So I think the Bama game is maybe a little late to be bringing in official visitors. I mean, OU's going to have a bunch of 26 and 27 kids come in for that game, hopefully, both regionally and nationally. But I think in terms of making that a pure 25 recruiting weekend, I think that's a little late. So I would like to see OU make some action in the time frame for either South Carolina or for Maine. Maine's not going to be a great football game, but it would be a good host weekend. The coaches probably a little chance for them to the Maine game is going to be, it's not. Let's just call it what it is. It's not going to be that competitive. Hopefully, hopefully OU's offense is improved by then, and the defense is still playing great, and they can put Maine away and get some backups in and not wear the first team roster down. But we'll see how this goes. But you definitely have before it was okay. 2 was fine. You had a nose guard and an elite 3 tech, which was like okay. But now you need another big defensive tackle. You need a nose guard or a big defensive tackle, or again another 3 technique that's just that is just a sensational player that like it's not a problem. Wilson, somebody who like you could play him with Wilson and it would be a terrorizing front defensive tackle pair. Just to recap, like I said, 247. Last week I mentioned this, so I'll just repeat this for those that maybe missed last week's episode. Babalola talked to 247. They sent a guy to his game and were able to get an interview with him. And he seems to be indicating he's going to decide around the end of October, around the end of his regular season. All 5 schools are still in play. Depending upon who you talk to, there's no consensus, I think, on a final 2. I think the only school that most sites seem to think is in the mix is Michigan. So generally you go with that. But I'm a little confused as to why, if Michigan is such the obvious choice, why he hasn't verbaled yet. So obviously OU's got their own offensive problems. Michigan's, is seems to be struggling a little bit under Sharon Moore. I think the the issue at Michigan about Sharon Moore and his involvement with the sign stealing and the NCAA. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's being used by other schools negatively in terms of trying to keep Babalola from committing to Michigan. That's pure speculation from me. So we'll see how this goes. But I don't think he's deciding until the end of October, which again I think is too late for OU to bring anybody new in offensive line wise, which worries me because I just can't. I can't see OU not signing 5 high school offensive linemen again. The O-line has been such a problem. Depth is such a problem. You cannot keep undersigning high school offensive linemen every year, regardless of what else you do. So, and again, if Babalola decides, October 15th, that really only gives you the main visit weekend to bring in some kids. Because again, everybody that they've offered at O-line, Babalola is the only one that is out there that visited. And you're not getting kids that don't visit. That's just that's not the way recruiting really works. Although there are a couple of names maybe that would fit. But I don't understand not aggressively going after somebody. If you get them and then Babalola falls in your lap, you signed 6 high school offensive linemen. And how is that really a problem with everything OU's gone through lately? So we'll see where that goes. I think Cortez Mills is reconnected with OU. I think the drama with that situation is over. We'll see. But if nothing else, Cortez has got to be seeing a path to immediate playing time in Norman right now with the injuries and struggles OU's having at wide receiver. So he came to town for the Tennessee game. Everything seems to be good right there. So at this point, again, you've heard me say I'm just very confused as to why there's no D-line offers, defensive end offers, linebacker offers, or O-line offers. OU doesn't have anybody who's visited that's really available or out there without flipping somebody. So kind of confused about that whole situation. We'll see how it all shakes out, but it's confusing right now. I'm not sure why or what OU's waiting on for 2025 because they need to finish this class with 2 or 3 more players. A defensive end would be good. Linebacker would be really good. And again, another defensive tackle and another offensive lineman are just about absolute needs. It can't be portal guys. You need freshman high school guys. So kind of confused about all that. So we'll see. I'm hoping that maybe this week with them having a chance, the coaches can go out on the road Friday with OU being in a bye week and go visit some kids, see some kids in person, maybe extend some offers, evaluate some film and get some offers out there with the intent of building up that relationship to bring them in for South Carolina or Maine. But we'll see. There's nothing out there right now. So OU either is working to flip players and keeping it very, very under the radar, or they're waiting to go back on the road. I can't see OU standing pat with 2025. You've got to keep adding talent. If the SEC showed us everything, you got to keep adding talent and aggressively upgrading the roster any talent acquisition chance you have. So we'll see. But right now, we've not had a new 2025 kid visit through the month of September. So let's just do a quick quarterback update. So Hawkins had his first road start. Game over game, he looked better. He made plays. He seems to be doing well in the decision-making side of things. It's hard to make a projection on where the rest of the season is going to go, but if I had to bet, I would say that Mike Hawkins looks like he is going to be the OU starting quarterback for the rest of the year. So we'll see how that impacts the various quarterbacks that OU's recruiting and has verbaled. So first, Kevin Sperry reconfirmed his OU commitment on Twitter. He's also had a kind of slow start to the season. He's had back-to-back very good games against very good competition. So maybe he's starting, maybe the transition to Denton, he's starting to feel things, getting into the flow of the offense. Maybe the offense is starting to, give him more playmaking ability, do some things that Sperry is better at. I don't know. I have to take a look at the film a little bit. But so far, he's had 2 back-to-back very good games against probably the best competition he's played. So Geyer didn't necessarily win one of those games, but he played very well against North Crowley, who's loaded with players and is probably going to make a deep playoff run. And he played a very good game against Flower Mound, which I believe Denton Geyer did win. Jaden O'Neal also starting to heat up. His first 5, he's played his first 5 games. He has 14 total touchdowns, 1,150 total yards. Only has 2 interceptions and is completing passes at a 67% rate. Remember, he's still a sophomore. So that's really good stats. He's starting to look really good. So I think that's pretty solid. And then the only other news is that Peyton Houston did visit for the Tennessee game. That was reported by Sooner Scoop in one of their podcasts, I believe. That's what somebody told me. But Peyton Houston has received an LSU offer. Obviously, he's from Christian Evangel. That's a huge offer in-state. The only issue, I think, is that LSU seems focused on Louisiana quarterback Elijah Heaven, who is the number 1 ranked quarterback for 2027. I think he's number 2 in the nation. I think it's like a defensive end ranked ahead of him right now on Rivals, who has I think the best 27 rankings right now. I'd probably put the most effort and work into them. So I don't know if Houston, if his LSU offer is sort of committable or not. He's off to a strong start. So is Trey Taylor, the Illinois quarterback. So I think OU will keep both of those kids going, and maybe after their their sophomore year. Jaden O'Neal, this is his junior year coming up. Made that mistake there. Sorry. Maybe after their sophomore year, maybe one of them might decide to grab the OU offer. We'll see how things shake out. But Houston's got an LSU offer. LSU is going to start paying some attention there because obviously Elijah Haven's going to get offers from everybody in the country. So, and Peyton Houston's ranked like top 20 in the country. So not a huge distance talent-wise. Haven's a bigger kid. He's 6'5", like 190, whereas Peyton Houston's around 6 foot. So we'll just end with some updates from OU commitments and how are they doing during their high school campaigns. So we'll start with Cortland Guillory. The cornerback has been having just a fantastic start to his year. It's been documented on Twitter pretty heavily by a number of recruiting sites. He blocked another field goal and is just playing cornerback at just an elite level. He looks like he's going to be like the next. He could be the next star for the OU secondary, which is just building depth upon depth in the secondary. So Cortland Guillory at cornerback, if he looks as good as this when he gets to Norman, we've got like our next possible cornerback star in Crimson. Then Tory Blaylock, the running back in the class for 2025. He had 211 yards rushing and 6 TDs on something like 13 carries. He had, I think, 3 long distance runs plus a couple of 20, 25 plus yard runs. He looks fantastic. I mean, his speed is absurd. I know some OU fans have seen some, Caden Durham highlights at LSU, and they're like, why did we miss out on this guy? Well, just wait for Tory Blaylock. The film looks very, very similar. He looks fantastic. I think he's badly underrated, and these kind of showings will hopefully get him back into the top 100, top 150 range. Then you've got safety Marcus Wimberly from Arkansas. The 2 Arkansas safeties both are just playing fantastic. Wimberly is playing both. They're both playing, going two-way players right now, making just lots of plays. So they look fantastic. Wimberly had like 200 yards rushing and 4 TDs, plus pass defenses. Marion Robinson had like 3 TDs, 2 rushing, 1 receiving, plus being a playmaker on defense. So both of the OU, so Guillory, Wimberly, Omarion Robinson, that's 3 of the DB commitments. And let's just talk about Malik Hawkins. I don't have any stats, but I watched some of the film, and Hawkins is playing, again, a fantastic cornerback. And Frisco Emerson held their opponent to something like negative 30 yards of offense. So he's leading that defense. I think he's badly underrated. Obviously, his brother is a very fast, athletic individual, and I have no reason to think that Malik's not going to be the same. And his dad has been teaching him how to play cornerback for years. So I think Guillory and Hawkins, you're talking adding 2 big corners to go with Devon Jordan and Jeremiah Newcomb from last year, and Eli Bowen. So you're just adding the secondary future in Norman looks great. So OU does need some wide receiver help, obviously, and I'll just highlight 2 of the names. Elijah Thomas, the star from Chakota, he had 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving the other day, 4 touchdowns. He just looks elite. I wish there's a way that he can get into a high school all-star game so he can get properly evaluated and people can just see how fantastic he is. And then I mentioned it before, Cortez Mills had 4 catches for 96 yards, had another good day. Emmanuel Choice had another good day, almost 100 yards receiving, big 56-yard touchdown play that was videos on Twitter. So OU's 3 of the OU wide receivers had really good days. Obviously, Marcus Harris was off, and Mater Day is cruising along on their all-star schedule. So he's doing well. And Grayson Harris is putting up really good numbers for Ennis, who are just struggling a little bit. Their defense isn't playing very well. They're getting into some big shootouts. So Ennis is struggling, but it looks like Grayson Harris is off to he's looking exactly what I thought he was going to be, a high-level slot receiver for the Sooners. Finally, OU did make 2 new offers. I expect more 27 offers to go out as the year goes on. They offered Braylon Williams, who calls himself the Beast. This is a 2027 linebacker. He's saying he's 6'2", 235, nearly 240. That's an interesting offer for linebacker. He's a big Mike linebacker. So it'll be interesting to see where lots of schools have been offering him lately. Be interested to see where that tracks. And then OU offered a wide receiver from Georgia. His name's Ryan Mosley, which is interesting because OU's got some good wide receiver offers for 2026 in terms of players like Jalen Pyle, Aljor Miles, Mason James, among others. So Jordan Clay down in San Antonio as well, who they recently offered Zion Robinson in Mansfield area. So I was interested to see OU make this offer. I don't know too much about Ryan, but I'll be tracking his film and seeing where it goes. He's a lower ranked 3-star right now, but Georgia just has a lot of skill ability and skill talent and players. So you never know. They can easily be a star under the radar in Georgia with the ridiculous amount of high school talent that's in the state. So that's all the recruiting news I've got for you guys. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and don't forget to leave a rating. Please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content and to support this podcast. The Patreon site is one of the ways I support doing this podcast for free and providing you guys the free 2 free recruiting pods every week, basically. So please consider giving the Patreon site a free trial and and seeing the content there as well. So thanks, everyone.